10 things that always made me feel better on a bad day, even at 80. There are days when even breathing feels like a chore. When you wake up and the weight is already waiting at the edge of your bed, as if it spent the night curled up beside you. At 80, you'd think I'd be used to it by now. The aches, the bad news, the quiet mornings that feel too quiet. But let me tell you something honest. Some days are still just hard. Age doesn't shield you from sorrow. It just gives you more memories to compare it to. I've had my share of those days. Days when the sun rose, but everything inside me felt dim. When grief sat at the table like an old friend who overstayed their welcome. When loneliness echoed louder than laughter. I don't say that to be dramatic. I say it because it's true. For me and probably for you too. But through the years, through the ups and the unravelings, I've learned something important. You don't always need to fix a bad day. Sometimes you just need to soften it. You need to find something small, a sound, a smell, a gesture that reminds you you're still here, still human, still worth comforting. Not everything that helped me over the years came from a book or a therapist's office. Some of the best medicine came in the form of a hot mug in my hand, dirt beneath my nails, or the sound of an old song floating through a crackling radio. It came from doing something with my hands when my heart didn't know what to do. It came from reaching out when I wanted to curl in. This isn't a list of miracles. I'm not going to hand you 10 magical steps to erase your pain or rewrite your day. But I am going to share what's real, what's helped, what's lasted. These are things I reach for not because they're impressive, but because they work. Because they've met me in the worst of my days and reminded me again and again that I could keep going. So if today's one of those days, or if you're just curious what keeps a heart like mine beating after 8 decades, I invite you to stay with me. Sit down. Breathe. Let's talk about the little things that carried me through the long nights and quiet mornings. The things that still make the heaviness a little lighter. The things that helped me feel better, even when nothing else seemed to. There's something about holding a warm cup in your hands that feels like being held yourself. I can't tell you how many times I've stood in my kitchen, weathered, worn, heart heavy, and reached for the kettle. It's almost automatic now. A kind of ritual. Not for caffeine, not for energy, but for comfort. The steam rising, the clink of the spoon against ceramic, the familiar weight of the mug between my palms. It's quiet magic, that little ceremony. It didn't matter whether it was coffee, tea, or even plain hot water with a slice of lemon. What mattered was what it represented. Warmth, stillness, a pause in the noise. Something I could do, even when I felt like I couldn't do anything else. Back when the kids were small and money was tight, a hot drink at the end of the night was our luxury. It was how we closed the day. After the dishes were done and the house went silent, I'd pour a cup, sit by the window, and just breathe. Sometimes I'd watch the rain streak the glass. Sometimes I'd let the cup rest in my lap like an anchor, reminding me I was still here, still whole, even if chipped. There were mornings too. Mornings after long, sleepless nights filled with worry. You know the kind, when your body's awake but your soul hasn't caught up. On those days, I'd cradle that first cup like a lifeline. I'd sip slowly, letting it warm my chest, hoping it would warm my spirit too. And you know what? It usually did. Even now, at 80, I still start my day this way. I don't rush it. I sit at the kitchen table, feel the heat in my hands, and let the world spin a little slower for those few minutes. It reminds me that comfort doesn't have to be grand. It can be boiled water and a little quiet. So when your day feels unkind, start here. Make something warm. Hold it. Drink it slow. Let it tell your body you're safe, you're here, you're not alone. There's healing in the soil. I don't know how to explain it in scientific terms, and I don't really care to. All I know is this. When my hands are in the dirt, something in me settles. It started when I was young, barefoot summers, digging holes just to see what was beneath. Later, when life became complicated and full of responsibility, I found myself drawn back to the earth. We didn't have much, but we always tried to grow something. Tomatoes, basil, marigolds that bloomed. Like little sons, I didn't do it to be productive. I did it because it felt like the only thing I could control. There were days I'd come home exhausted, discouraged, maybe even heartbroken. And instead of lying down, I'd go outside. I'd kneel in the dirt, pull weeds, plant seeds, tend to roots. The act of it, touching something alive, watching it respond, gave me peace I couldn't find anywhere else. It taught me patience. It taught me hope, because gardening doesn't give you instant results. You plant something and then you wait. You water it, you check on it. You trust that something is happening beneath the surface, even when it looks like nothing's changed. Isn't that just like healing? I remember a year when I was grieving hard. Loss hung over me like a fog. And still, every morning, I'd go out to water my garden. I didn't feel joy doing it, but I felt presence. I felt grounded. And slowly, without realizing, I began to grow again too. Even now, I keep a few pots by the window. My knees don't bend like they used to, and I can't spend hours outside the way I once did, but I can still run my fingers through soil. I can still press a seed into the ground and whisper, "Let's try again." So if today feels heavy, if your mind is loud and your spirit is tired, go outside. Touch the earth. Tend to something that depends on you. Let your hands get dirty. Let the sun kiss your shoulders. And remember, life grows from the messiest places. You don't need a green thumb. You just need to show up. Like the garden, you don't have to bloom overnight, but you will bloom. I did, and I still am. There's a certain kind of music that doesn't just fill the room. It fills you. It wraps around your memories like a favorite old blanket and says, "I remember too." There were days when everything felt heavy. When I'd lost someone, or I'd disappointed myself, or the silence in the house felt too loud to bear. And in those moments, I'd reach for an old song. Not just any song, but my songs. The ones that played on summer nights when we rolled the windows down. The ones we slow danced to in dim kitchens with bare feet. The ones I heard on my parents' radio while I did homework at the table, pretending not to sing along. And as soon as the music started, it was like time folded in on itself. Suddenly, I was 16 again, wearing jeans that fit just right, dreaming of someone I hadn't kissed yet. Or I was a young mother, rocking a baby to sleep, with a lullaby humming on the record player. Or I was driving down a dusty road with nothing but time ahead of me and a cassette player full of hope. It didn't matter what was happening in the present. The music brought me home. Not home as in a place, but home as in a feeling. Sometimes, I'd sing along even if my voice cracked and the notes didn't land like they used to. Sometimes I'd just listen and let the tears fall. Not from sadness exactly, but from recognition. Because the songs knew. They remembered what I remembered. They held the years I thought I'd forgotten. Music never asked me to be okay. It never rushed me or judged me or told me to move on. It just played, patiently, softly, over and over. And on the worst days, that was enough. Even now, at 80, I keep a playlist ready, not for background noise, but for healing, for grounding, for that ache that only fades when an old familiar tune reminds you that you're still you, even if you've weathered a few storms since the last time you heard it. So next time your chest feels too tight, or the world feels too much, go find your song, the one that saw you through, the one that reminds you who you were and still are underneath it all. Put it on, turn it up, and let it carry you. I've written so many letters in my life that no one ever read. Some were angry, some were grieving, some were full of love that had nowhere to land. I never planned to send them. That wasn't the point. The point was to let the words out before they soured inside me, because there are things we carry in silence for too long. Things we want to say but can't. Not because we're afraid, but because we know they won't land right, or they'd stir up more than they'd settle. So instead, I wrote. Late at night, when the house was asleep, I'd take out a notebook or an old envelope and just pour it out. Letters to people who hurt me, telling them, "You may never understand, but this is what it felt like." Letters to people I lost too soon, whispering, "I wish you could see me now." Letters to younger versions of myself, tender, broken versions, saying, you're doing better than you think. Sometimes just the act of writing was enough to stop the ache from spreading, to take something swirling inside and give it shape, a beginning, a middle, an end, and then I'd fold it up, tuck it away in a drawer, or rip it up, or burn it in the sink, watching the ashes curl and float like letting go. It's one of the most healing things I've ever done, because not every hurt needs a reply, not every feeling needs to be shared, but every truth, especially the hard, heavy ones, deserves to be honored, even if only by you. These days, I still write, sometimes to people who've been gone for decades, sometimes to the child I used to be, sometimes to no one at all, and every time I feel lighter. So if your heart is crowded today, write. Don't worry about grammar or punctuation or making sense. Just speak. Say what you need to say. Then decide if you want to keep it or let it go. There's power in that. There's peace in it too. Because you don't need an audience to heal. Sometimes you just need a pen. There's something sacred about putting one foot in front of the other, especially when everything inside you wants to curl up and quit. I used to think walking was just exercise, something you did to stay fit, to run errands, to get from one place to the next. But I've come to believe it's something more. On the hardest days, the ones that came heavy with grief or loneliness or just that strange gray kind of sadness, I didn't need a solution. I needed movement. I needed to get outside, to feel the air on my face, to hear the gravel under my shoes, to see something, anything, besides the inside of my own thoughts. There were days when I barely made it down the driveway, days when I shuffled, not strode. But it didn't matter, because walking isn't about pace. It's about presence. It's about proving to yourself that you're still moving, still alive, still part of this great big breathing world. I've walked through every season of my life, as a teenager, pacing sidewalks with my dreams too big for my pockets, as a young parent, pushing strollers and counting clouds, as an older man, letting the breeze carry my worries a block or two away. There's something about walking that resets you. It doesn't fix the problem, but it makes it feel less permanent. And sometimes in the middle of a walk, something shifts. You hear birdsong. You smell cut grass. A neighbor waves. A child laughs in the distance. And without realizing it, you've remembered joy. Even now, slower, stiffer, more cautious, I still walk. Maybe not far, maybe not fast, but I go. I let my feet speak when my heart can't. I let the rhythm of each step remind me that I am still moving forward no matter how heavy the day feels. So when the walls start to close in, lace up your shoes, step outside, look at the sky, walk a block, or even just to the mailbox and back. It's not about how far you go, it's about the fact that you went. And sometimes that's the most powerful thing you can do. There's a strange thing that happens when you feed something else. You end up feeding yourself too. I've spent many mornings on my back porch, a cup of coffee in one hand and a handful of birdseed in the other. The birds come slowly at first, cautious, curious, but they come. Cardinals, wrens, the occasional blue jay, and I sit there in the quiet, watching them eat. And somehow, it makes the world feel kinder. It reminds me that I still have something to give. Feeding someone, anyone, pulls you out of yourself. It takes you from what I lack to what I can offer. And that shift, as small as it seems, can carry you through an entire day. There were years when I cooked meals for a full house. Kids running around, guests dropping by, casseroles going in and out of the oven. And then, like all things, life changed. The house emptied. The chairs stayed pushed in. The fridge didn't need much filling. And let me tell you, feeding one is a different kind of quiet. But even then, even now, I find ways to give. A loaf of banana bread for the neighbor whose wife just passed. A sandwich wrapped up for the man who walks by my street collecting cans. A bowl of soup left on the doorstep for a friend going through something they don't know how to name. or sometimes just crumbs scattered for birds who've come to depend on me showing up. Because when you feed something else, you reconnect to your purpose. You become part of someone's day. You matter again, not for what you say or know or earn, but simply because you showed up and offered something warm, something needed, something kind. So on the days that feel empty, find something or someone you can feed: a bird, a neighbor, a dog, a friend. It doesn't have to be grand. Just give a piece of what you have, because giving fills you up in ways nothing else can. It reminds you that even on your worst day, you are still a source of comfort to the world, and that's something worth waking up for. There came a time when I realized the noise wasn't just outside. It had started to take root in me. I used to keep the news on all day. It was habit, really, a way to feel informed, connected, aware. But somewhere along the way, the headlines stopped informing me and started infecting me. Every hour a new crisis, every voice raised, every story worse than the last. And I'd sit there letting it pour into me like rain through a broken roof, wondering why I felt so anxious all the time. Then one day I turned it off. The silence was uncomfortable at first, like I'd lost something familiar. But then I heard something I hadn't heard in a long time myself. My own thoughts without the interference. My own breath steady and real. The hum of the refrigerator. The sound of a sparrow outside the window. The soft creak of the floorboards beneath me. Silence has a way of holding you when the world won't. I'm not saying the world doesn't matter. Of course it does. But I learned that I can't carry it all, and neither can you. You can't solve every problem. You can't mourn every tragedy. You can care without crumbling, but only if you know when to rest. Silence became my refuge. Not just the absence of sound, but the presence of peace. I began to make time for it. No distractions, no screens, just a chair by the window or a seat on the porch. Sometimes I'd close my eyes. Sometimes I'd just listen. To the wind, to the world slowing down, to my heart remembering its own rhythm. It didn't erase the bad days, but it gave them room to soften. And in that quiet space, healing found me. So if everything feels too loud today, turn it off. All of it. Let the world keep spinning for a while without you. Find a pocket of stillness, sit in it, breathe in the quiet. You might be surprised at how loudly your soul has been trying to speak. There's a box in my closet, worn edges, rubber bands holding it shut, corners soft with time. Inside are decades of frozen moments. Birthdays, weddings, road trips, ordinary Tuesdays that somehow felt worth capturing. And every now and then, on a hard day, I pull it out. Looking at old photos is like holding hands with your past. You see yourself in different clothes, different skin, standing beside people who are no longer here, laughing in a way that doesn't belong to the person you are now, but still lives somewhere inside you. There's a sweetness to it, a kind of warmth, proof that you've lived, that you've mattered, that there were good days even if you forgot how they felt. But I've learned something else too. Don't stay in that box too long, because memory, as beautiful as it is, can also pull you under. It can blur the lines between appreciation and grief, between remembrance and longing. I've had afternoons where I started looking through old pictures to cheer myself up, and ended up crying for hours, aching for what I can't get back. So, now I set a time limit, just a few photos, just enough to spark a smile, to whisper, "You've come far," and then I put the box away, before the nostalgia turns to sorrow. It's a delicate balance, honoring where you've been without getting stuck there. Still, there's comfort in it, in seeing faces you loved, in remembering who you were before the world asked you to be anything else, in recognizing that no matter what's changed, you were always you, and you're still here. So if today feels empty, go ahead, pull out a picture. One that makes you laugh, one that reminds you of who you love and who loved you. Sit with it for a moment. Let it fill the quiet. And then, when you're ready, return to the now. Because memory can warm your heart, but life Life is what still waits outside the frame. There was a time when I thought crying was a weakness, that it meant I'd lost control, or that I wasn't strong enough to carry whatever life had thrown at me. So I held it in, for years, through heartbreaks, funerals, disappointments, and everyday letdowns that piled up like dust in the corners of my chest. But here's the truth I wish I had known sooner. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let yourself cry. No explanations, no disclaimers, no apologies. Not because something dramatic happened, not because anyone demanded it, just because your heart is full and your body needs a way to release the weight. Because you've been brave for too long without a break. Because something, maybe everything, feels like too much. I remember sitting in the car one day alone after a doctor's appointment that didn't go the way I'd hoped. I turned the engine off, put my hands on the wheel, and just wept. No one was watching, no one was asking. It just came out and I let it. It didn't fix the situation, but it loosened something tight inside me. It made room for breath, for grace, for healing. I've cried in the kitchen, stirring soup. I've cried in church without knowing exactly what I was crying for. I've cried in the middle of folding laundry. And the older I get, the more I understand that tears are not the enemy. Shame is, you don't owe anyone an explanation for your sorrow. Not every tear has a story you can name. Sometimes your soul is simply full of fear, of hope, of memory, and it spills. Now, when the days are heavy and the emotions sit just under the surface, I give myself permission. I don't fight it. I don't tell myself to be grateful or stay strong. I just sit with the feeling, let it wash over me like a storm, knowing it'll pass. And when it does, the world feels a little softer. So if today you feel the tears coming, let them. You're not breaking. You're healing. One honest tear at a time. Sometimes all it takes is one voice on the other end of the line to remind you you're not alone. I can't count the number of times I've picked up the phone, not to fix anything, not to solve a problem, but just to hear someone say, I get it. That kind of connection is rare, and when you find it, you hold on to it like a lifeline. There's something about being known that soothes the deepest kind of ache, not having to explain every detail, not having to dress up your pain, just calling someone who understands the pause in your voice, someone who doesn't rush to cheer you up but sits with you in the mess, who says, yeah, me too, or I've been there, or simply, I'm here. I had a friend like that, Ruth. We didn't talk every day, but when we did, the conversation was real. No pretending, no fluff, just two people telling the truth, however it looked that day. She once said to me, some days are for holding it together. Some days are for falling apart. Either way, I'll sit with you. And she did, for years. Even now, with fewer names in my contact list, I make a point to reach out when the fog rolls in. It doesn't take long. 5 minutes. 10. Long enough to laugh about something, to cry if I need to say this day's been rough. And hear back, mine too. Or better yet, let's get through it together. We were never meant to do this alone. And if you don't have someone like that yet, don't give up. Sometimes that kind of connection comes from unexpected places. A neighbor, a former coworker, someone from church, a fellow gardener, even a stranger you meet once and somehow never forget. And sometimes, you become that person for someone else. The voice that reaches into someone else's bad day and makes it feel a little less heavy. So if today feels too much to carry on your own, pick up the phone. Call someone who knows your heart, someone who doesn't need you to explain. Or if no one comes to mind, write a message, send a note, open a door. Connection heals in ways nothing else can. You don't need advice. You need presence. You need someone who gets it, and I promise there's someone out there who does. Some people think that by the time you reach 80, you figured it all out. That the storms stop, the sadness softens, the hard days grow fewer. But the truth is, even now, after all these years, bad days still come. They still surprise me. They still knock the wind out of me sometimes. But what's changed isn't the weather. It's the shelter I've built. You learn after a while that you don't have to outrun the hard days. You don't have to pretend they don't hurt. or convince yourself to be stronger than you feel. What you need is a way to sit with them, to soften them, to find the things that make the waiting gentler, the darkness less absolute. These 10 things I've shared with you aren't magic. They're not cures, but they are anchors. They've kept me steady when everything else felt like it was shifting beneath my feet. A warm drink, a short walk, a quiet song, a call to a friend, feeding someone else when I didn't know how to feed myself, letting the tears come when they needed to. They may seem small, but I'm here to tell you, small saves you. Not in loud, triumphant ways, but in quiet, steady ones. They remind you that comfort isn't always found in big solutions. It's in being kind to yourself, over and over again. I've lived through wars, heartbreak, funerals, loneliness, and countless ordinary Tuesdays that felt unbearable for reasons I couldn't even name. And yet I'm still here, still waking up, still reaching for the things that make me feel a little more whole. So if you're watching this because today is one of those days, if the weight is heavy or the silence is loud or the tears are close, I want to tell you something that I wish someone had told me more often. You're allowed to hurt. You're allowed to not be okay. And you're allowed to take your time finding your way back to yourself. But please don't forget the small things, the soft places, the little rituals that hold you up when everything else feels too hard. Those are the things that have saved me, again and again, and they can save you too. Keep going. Keep reaching for warmth. Keep planting seeds. Keep calling the person who makes you laugh. Keep turning off the noise and listening to your own breath. You've already survived more than you think, and if no one's told you this lately, let me be the one to say it now. You are not alone in your sadness. You are not forgotten in your struggle, and you are still, always, worth comforting. Even at 80, I still have bad days. But I also have tools, memories, love, and I have the quiet, beautiful knowledge that I've made it through every hard day so far. So will you. And maybe, just maybe, one day you'll sit where I'm sitting and say to someone else, "Let me tell you the little things that saved me. Let me help you feel better too." Until then, take a breath, put the kettle on, and be gentle with yourself. You're doing better than you think. I promise.